everyone. Welcome you all to this episode of LinkedIn Live. Today we have a wonderful guest joining with us, Shannon Schmutzer, engagement director and senior employer brand expert. I would say I've been following Shannon back in the days when she was at Geico, and at that point, you know what, social media has been a great advantage where all of the employers are utilizing it for talent branding. And Shannon was one of the person who started off Facebook Live as a platform and Twitter as a platform to utilize to help the audience, help the talent, connect with the recruiters and all that best practices. So from that point onward, Shannon, I've been a great fan of yours. So thank you so much for being here with me today and to share your wisdom with our audience.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for that kind introduction. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, right now, you are engagement director and senior employer brand strategist at
Mhm.
Exco. Did I pronounce the company name correctly?
It's
Help me out.
Exacquio. Exacquio. Yeah,
Exactly.
Exacquio. Yes.
Great. That's such a unique name. And shout out to Susan out there. And I'm gonna, talk to her in terms of how she came up with that name. So tell me, tell our audience a little bit about you and your background. I've been following you on social media. I've connected with you on LinkedIn, and we networked. We talked in between a lot. And when it comes to any employer branding advice, you are the first person that I pick up the call and talk to you,
Oh,
right? So we know each other, but there's anyone out there who doesn't know of who you are and what you do and your background. Tell a little bit about you and your background today.
sure. So, for the past 20 years, I can't believe it's been 20 years, I've been working in various aspects of human resources and talent acquisition. I started my career as an agency recruiter in Washington, D.C. I've worked in compensation, benefits, employee relations. I've worked in talent acquisition, campus recruitment, employee relations, employee communications. And I've spent the past 10 years really focused on employer branding. When I'm not working, I am spending time with my family, my husband, my two daughters, and I also enjoy leading two Girl Scout troops. So it's a busy, very fulfilling life. One that I wake up and I just really enjoy what I get to do at work, and I get to enjoy what I do outside of work too.
This is so great. And you've been one of the, sought after person out there when it comes to remote work or flexible work options out there. So thank you so much for advocating that for all the, working moms and making it happen from your end and being there as a, as a role model for all the working moms out there. Thank you so much for that. So tell our audience a little bit about, the organization Exactrio
Oh,
and what do you do there?
yeah, so Exactly, we are an employer brand experience firm. And what that means is we work with our clients all over the world to help them understand and uncover who they are as an employer and what their employees value most. So we like to say we help our clients understand what's inside the hearts and minds of their employees. Through that workforce research, we can then move from research to building the authentic employer brand architecture foundation for our clients. And then we'll move into activation. So we work with our clients to create creative concepts, creative assets, rebuild career sites. We'll do photo shoots and create employer brand anthem videos, employee testimonial videos. We really offer that end-to-end employer brand experience that takes the client really on a journey from the research through activation and measurement.
This is such a great experience to share with our audience who are starting off from scratch in terms of building an employer brand, and especially for those organizations who are in the middle of okay, we have an employer brand out there, but when it comes to making it a little bit more pre-planned and strategic, and making sure that we are working towards that talent brand awareness on employer brand, and this conversation is going to help them. So I actually talked to a few, I would say, corporate practitioners, people like me who are in the role of employer brand in an organization. But this is actually the first time a third party, right, a consulting company who is expert in doing and making it happen and advising those organizations who doesn't know of where to start and how to start. So here we are. So we are about to talk. The 5 steps to building a strategic employer brand, right? So, what are the 5 steps? And tell our audience, where do they start
Yeah. So, and I've been in your shoes too. So I've been that corporate practitioner. Most of the team at Exactly, we've been in those shoes as well and have worked in-house in talent acquisition. We know the challenges that you've experienced and we know what it's like to try to take an organization on this journey. And the 5 steps that we're going to talk about today, number one, starting with research.
from?
So how can we build a brand and activate and communicate if we really don't even know what it is that we want to talk about? Research helps us really dig into that and uncover who we are as an organization and what we mean to our employees. Step two is the top or the EVP. And this is, what your employees value the most about their employment experience. And you as an organization, you perform on it really well. You're meeting their needs. You're delivering on that experience that the employees value. We'll then talk about step three, which is differentiation. So you've probably seen this, Nisha, where you're scrolling online, whether it's social or you're driving down the street and you see all these billboards and everybody is saying, we're hiring, we're
Mm-hmm.
hiring, we're hiring, join our team. Well, we work with our clients and we would advocate too we need to sound different. We can't all go to market with that same sort of vanilla, we're hiring, join our team message. So we'll talk about differentiation today. And then step four is reputation analysis. So a lot of what we do in employer brand is understand our reputation, both internally as well as externally. If
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand who we are and what our employees think, we can't really understand our full reputation. Oftentimes, what we see with our clients and we see in the industry is a big focus on the external reputation. So we'll talk about how the internal and external really need to align.
Mm-hmm.
And then step five, the final thing that we'll talk about this morning is really building that strategic and authentic employer brand foundation. So
Mm-hmm.
this is really is an internal focus, that foundation that you would use to then communicate both internally to your employees
Mm-hmm.
as well as externally to your candidates. We believe at Exactio that employer brand to truly be strategic, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just focused externally on recruitment marketing. That's certainly a part of it. We see recruitment marketing as a subset of your employer brand, but we'll talk about making sure that we're building an architecture
Mm-hmm.
that resonate internally as well as externally.
Well, this is great. I was actually taking down notes as you speak. We talked about 5 steps. One is research. Start with research, and then AVP, differentiation, reputation analysis, strategic and authentic employer brand foundation. So thank you so much for sharing this. This gives a roadmap for all of us out there in terms of who are making it happen when it comes to employer branding, in terms of where do we start, right? And how do we start? So let's talk about that research factor, if you will. So let's say, for example, as an organization like us or organizations out there, how would you advise those organizations, small or medium or big, when it comes to conducting research for the employer brand?
Yeah, there's all sorts of different types of ways that we can go about getting research. We always believe in being able to really get in, get that qualitative data. So a lot of organizations already have access to baseline quantitative data. So I would say that's a starting point as well. Go and gather all of your engagement survey data that you can find. What is that existing baseline information that you can already gather and start to get your hands on that.
Okay.
In addition to that, we would recommend the qualitative, having those conversations
Mm-hmm.
with your employees and not just at the senior level. So we like to say employer brands aren't built in a boardroom, right? They bubble up from your employees. And so when you're doing research, it's really important to have those conversations at the high level because you'll need executive buy-in, but also make sure that you're talking with employees at all levels. So if you are a retailer or a grocery store or you're a manufacturer and you've got those frontline hourly employees, make sure that their voice is heard and their voice is part of the research.
Mm-hmm.
That can be done through internal focus groups.
Okay.
In addition, sometimes we've got organizations where not everyone works in one location. So making sure that you've got representation globally. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got clients that have locations in the US as well as Europe and Asia. So
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you have representation across all locations, as well as specific functions too. So making sure that you are not just talking to your corporate professionals, but you're pulling in tech or your early career. You're talking to your frontline customer service representatives. If you're a healthcare provider, also making sure that you're talking to your nurses as well as administration, as well as your nursing assistants. So making sure you've got diversity within the groups that you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So focus groups, absolutely. We run focus groups around the world for all of our clients. We can do those either in person or virtually. And then other parts of research to external focus groups. So once we understand internally what our employees are thinking, we do have some clients that will also choose to do external focus groups to really gauge what the brand perception and their brand awareness is amongst their target or typical audience that they would have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In interviews as well, we'll often do interviews with executives from different functions. So your CFO, your CEO, chief marketing officers, VPs of talent acquisition, VPs of finance, to really understand what their experience is like, as well as the experience they're trying to create within their own functions and teams.
Right.
We'll often look at other survey data or launching our own surveys. New hire surveys offer really great perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what we would call a declination survey. So those individuals who have received an offer from you,
Mm-hmm.
but they've declined. That's a really interesting population too, to understand what they went through in their most recent job search, what their experience was like, why they opted not to accept their offer can be very insightful.
It is, yeah, and that's one of the areas organizations are missing when it comes to okay, do we even have to include those, right? In order to get feedback from, we should definitely. So I have one follow-up question where you talked about, you know, getting ideas from employees who live and breathe the DNA of the organization. So when it comes to survey, do you recommend any particular tool for, let's say, smaller organizations who doesn't have the capability to have an in-built survey within the system?
Sure. There's a number of tools that are out there. So you could certainly use Google Forms, which
Okay.
is readily available. That doesn't always get through every organization's firewall, so you have to check with that, check with IT.
Okay.
Survey Monkey certainly offers some tools where you can either use their free platform, or if you've got a paid team or pro platform, you can white label that. There are certainly other tools that are out there. There's other organizations that are out there. You may
Mm-hmm.
even want to talk to your marketing team. The marketing department may already have a tool or an established partnership with another vendor that you
Mm-hmm.
can piggyback on and use that platform in order to then survey your employee population or to survey your candidates.
Right. Right. So my next question is about people exploration, right? So how do you actually recommend, or what are some of the ways that you would recommend to those organizations to uncover how they are different from their competitors?
Sure. A great question. So first we'd start with identifying who are your competitors, right? So who are your competitors locally? Who are your competitors within your industry? Who are your competitors from a consumer or market standpoint? And oftentimes our clients go through, I mean, there's a lot of lengthy conversations that they're having in order to come up with that competitive list.
Mhm.
So that's number one, is determine who are your competitors and do they differ from location to location? Do they differ from function to function? So if you are maybe a non-traditional tech organization, but you're looking for tech talent, you may need to look outside of your specific industry. Let's say you're a retail organization or you're a coffee shop, but you're
Mhm.
looking for software engineers, UX designers, front end designers. You may look at it and say, well, I'm not just competing against other retailers or other coffee shops. I might actually be competing against the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons of the world for the same tech talent. So understanding who your competitors are is really important. And then doing that competitive analysis. What are they saying in the market? What is the competitor's position? How are they selling their position and communicating who they are as an employer out in the marketplace? Kind of put on your own job seeker hat and kind of go out there and look at all of their information and how they're positioning themselves. And once you get to the lay of the land, and as
Mhm.
you're going through your own research, you start to look for where there's overlap. If if you're hearing from your research that you've got a great team
Mhm.
and your competitors are all selling, you've got a great team, so that's a point of similarity that you would have. So maybe in your research, you've uncovered that people really value the work-life balance, but your competitors aren't saying that. We're not getting any information, or maybe they're saying the opposite. That
Mhm.
might be a kind of differentiation that you can then hang your hat on when you're communicating and when you're planning to go to market with your own employer brand.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. It's not just about doing everything what others are doing, right? It's about finding your niche, finding the key value that you can contribute to your talent, to your employees, and uncovering that can be a little challenging at the beginning, and definitely, your insights help our employer branding professionals out there. So we talked about uncovering, um, what it takes to differentiate yourself. And you talked about competitive analysis.
Mhm.
Is there any particular tools that you would recommend to do that competitive analysis instead of just relying on the research? What are some of the tools that you would recommend to our employers to go and research and do a competitive analysis?
That's great. So really, it starts with a lot of online research, talking with your marketing department as well. They may have information from a consumer or corporate standpoint of
Okay.
who your competitors are and what research that already exists.
Okay.
So whenever you can get research that already exists, that's going to help give you a leg up already. We use our own internal proprietary tools with our clients when we're looking at the competitive analysis as well as doing a messaging analysis.
Hmm.
So I would say start with marketing, see what tools they have available internally, and then
Hmm.
really it is about looking at public facing. How are your competitors already going to market and positioning themselves, and making using your expertise to
Hmm.
make that assessment and that analysis, and then look for those points of similarity as well as those points of differentiation.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I'm actually writing down notes as we speak while at the same time talking and sharing comments. So this has been an insightful conversation indeed. So my next question is about brand perception. So understanding a brand perception can be a little bit challenging when it comes to you or an employer in understanding how your brand is perceived by your own candidates or your talent or job seekers out there, right? Um, so what's your insight? What's your advice to our employers out there when it comes to understanding that brand reputation or brand perception
Yeah.
and um, working towards it?
Yeah. I would say the first step is remove your assumptions. So, as recruiters or as HR professionals, we bring our own perceptions based on
Mhm.
our experiences. And
Mhm.
we can't build a brand based on our own assumptions. or based on the assumptions of others. But that's why research is so important because it gives us that data.
Hmm.
So if we're thinking about brand reputation, we mentioned internal focus groups. So ask your employees, what was your perception of the organization as an employer before you started working here?
Hmm.
And then you sit back and you listen to what their answers are. You start to try to pick up what are the similarities that we're hearing across focus groups or across functions. And use your recruiting skills, use your HR skills and probe deeper when you hear something and ask, oh, can you help me understand that a little bit more? I heard you say this. Could you share a little bit more context around that? So starting internally and asking what were your perceptions before and
Hmm.
how have those perceptions changed now that you work here? And so what we might perceive externally could be very different than what we're living and experiencing internally. And it's important to understand both of those. So that's internal with your own employees. Then external with focus groups, understanding with when we do external focus groups, we like to talk to people who fit kind of that key talent profile or that person we want to target. Understanding from them, what have you heard about what it's like to work at ABC company or XYZ organization? And
Hmm.
why do you think that is? Can you help me understand that? Your friends or former colleagues that work here, what they shared with you. And so understanding what the work history is really important as well. And then the third place where you can start to really understand perceptions and reputation are all of the online review sites.
Right. At the very beginning, you said one point where you talked about most of the organization. I mean, when it comes to employer brand, a big focus is out there for external facing. And glad that you shared that it is as much as important that we focus internally too to make sure our employees know what our organization um, employee value proposition is, right? Or what our organization stands for,
Mhm.
right? It's not just about um, I would say, some of the employees they might know, but then chances are people perceiving ideas or perceiving their employer brand differently internally. Let's say when it comes to, I was talking to one of the employees, at my own organization, when it comes to, I was just researching and figuring out, okay, they wanted to refer some friends. So if I was just asking a random question. So if you were to share it to your network or if you were to share it to your, social media platforms, what's the number one thing that you would want to, showcase as it's an attracting factor for the organization, right?
Mhm.
So it can be different. I mean, that position can be different in generally in helping your employees know of how to promote the employer brand and help you in the talent acquisition is important too. Thanks for sharing that. So one aspect that you've been talking about a lot is about the employer brand architecture.
Mhm.
So the terminology seems to be a little bit interesting. So can you tell our audience what is that employer brand architecture is and how does it work?
Sure. So think of house. Did you
Okay.
ever go and just start buying the wood and the windows and the paint color and just buying it and then just hope that it all kind of fits together magically? No,
Mm-hmm.
you would start with a blueprint, right? You would start with a blueprint. You would say, this is what we're working towards. This is what we're building here. The employer brand architecture is that blueprint. It's that design that really grounds everyone that's
Mm-hmm.
working on the house on together aligning us in what our common goal is. And the employer brand architecture is very similar. It helps us understand who we are as an employer and how we message out both internally as well as externally. And so it's very, we take a very consumer marketing approach with our working to build their employer brand architecture. Oftentimes, marketing, their strategy, they've got a brand architecture piece as well. And it includes things like your brand position. So, what is the position that you want to go when it comes to doing the market? It also includes employer brand pillars. So that's the core messages. Those help inform the core messages that we will then take into next week and reinforce and consistently communicate and market as well. We've got our position, our pillars. We'll often hear the terms brand line, tagline, strap line. We use employer brand line here, and that's that succinct, powerful one line or one phrase statement that distills all of the research down into this one statement that you go to market with. So, for example, it's the Nikes just to do it.
Yeah.
Or it's the America runs on Duncan, right? That one kind of just iconic tagline or
Mm-hmm.
brand line. So we'll do that for our clients as well as it relates to their employment experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then other parts of the brand architecture, depending on the client, but we might have brand personality, voice, tone. It's all of these components that really anchor all future creative and all future communications.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is actually great information. So when it comes to, you talked about a tagline, brand voice and reputation, and working from that architecture perspective,
Mhm.
you're actually creating a blueprint, and it's actually like a directing a movie, right? And launching it out there. But when it comes to, I have this thought in my mind. Um, let me put it this way. Let's say, for example, they already have an image out there. You already have some content out there. Employees, previous employees, or alumni, they must have already shared positive, negative, mixed emotions, right? So how do they clean up, right, before they create that blueprint or before they launch what they have created as a blueprint? How do
Mhm.
they clean up that prior history or any negative history if they have?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we're actually working with a client right now that's got a very interesting past. And
Mm-hmm,
they've been doing work for more than a decade
mm-hmm,
to kind of reshape, reframe. And that's oftentimes when a client will come to us is there's something going on
mm-hmm,
within the business that's then driving a change in talent needs. And then they come to us to help them with the employer brand work. And so it's not necessarily about going backwards and cleaning up. I
sure.
mean, that's part of your story.
Mm-hmm,
So it's determining like where are you right now in your journey. Right?
mm-hmm,
All a work in progress, whether it's at an individual level or a team level or an organizational level. We're a work in
sure.
progress. We're on a journey. And so it's really about the client saying, this is where we are
Mm-hmm,
in our maturity as an organization. It's where we are on our journey as a company.
mm-hmm,
This place and time, we're making a stake in the ground that this is the time to change. So it
sure.
might be coming out of some sort of crisis mode. It
Mm-hmm,
could be we've just gone through a merger and acquisition and we're
true.
blending multiple cultures.
Mm-hmm,
And that's creating some of this messiness.
mm-hmm,
And our job is to help the client wrap their hands around everything and understanding fully the current state. We have some organizations that say, actually, quite a few clients where they're not just going through an employer brand
mm-hmm,
redesign, but they're also rethinking and reimagining their corporate brand as well
mm-hmm.
in order to clean it up, for lack of better terms, in order to make this switch or this change, or they've got aspirations for other
Mm-hmm,
things that are going on in their business. And to get there, we help them understand that current state and we
mm-hmm.
help them understand what's authentic and really being true to where they are in their journey. So I would say you have to understand where you've come from, but instead of looking back, look forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's such a great insight instead of looking back, looking forward, because future is always bright, and we would never know, right? What it's gonna take for you in the next years, and all the exciting factors, and you want to attract talent to that exciting piece of your future. So thank you, Shannon, for such an insightful conversation. 5 steps for building a strategic employer brand is indeed helpful for me personally. I'm pretty sure people who are in the talent attraction or talent acquisition field and especially employer branding field is going to help them too. Last but not least, I have one personal question to you when it comes to, you know, what's your success mantra when it comes to you being you, um, being a working mom, making it happen, and working with, top companies out there, helping them build their employer brand.
So what, I'm sorry, there was a little bit of static at the very beginning, Nisha. What was the first part of the question?
What's your success mantra? What helped you to be who you are as a person, who you are right now in your career?
Oh, so I wasn't prepared for this question. I am also. Um, I'm going to give a shout out to the very first person who took a chance on me and hired me as a recruiter 20 years ago as a fresh college grad and had no former recruiting experience. And her name is Holly Metz. And Holly owned a recruiting agency in Washington, D.C. And she instilled this mantra in me. And it is plan your work, work your plan.
Okay.
Right? So we can't just start going out and doing stuff if we don't know what goals and what outcomes we're driving towards.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have a plan in place and we're comfortable and we're aligned and we're excited about that plan,
Mm-hmm.
then you go and you work that plan. And that is definitely a mantra I use in my personal life, whether it's planning a birthday party for my soon to be 12-year-old, or if it's working with a client and saying, okay, what is it that we're going to do to now activate and launch your employer brand? So plan your work your plan. And Holly, if you are watching this, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thanks for sharing your valuable wisdom to all of our audience. And I'm pretty sure there's much more to learn and much more to, you know, um, get from you as an expert. And let that be on our next show. But with this 30 minutes time, I want to wrap it up and give, you know. The rest of the time to our audience and the rest of the time to you. And you have a wonderful rest of the day. And again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Nisha. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye. Take care.
Everyone.